Thank you for stealing at Barnaby's. That's what I tell all the shoplifters I catch as the cops are putting them in their cars and taking them down to the station. You see, if they didn't try and steal stuff, I wouldn't have a job. So it's kind of like job security for me. Anyway, hi, I'm Winston. I'm the LP guy here at Barnaby's. For those of you who don't know what LP stands for, well, unless you've been living under a rock your whole life, you already know what it stands for. But I'm going to tell you anyway. It stands for Loss Prevention, which means I keep an eye out for employee theft, customer theft, fraudulent coupons, overbilled invoices, things like that. Anything that would cause Barnaby's to lose money in any way, shape, or form. Now, I'm sure you've been told this before, but Barnaby's is a very old store. We don't have one of those 24-hour DVD recording systems like the big name stores do. We still record everything on VHS tapes using an old VCR system. We have to change the tapes every 8 hours and hope nothing happens during the time that we're changing the tapes. We have a few cameras throughout the store, actually 14 in total, one on each register, one in the cash office, one down the HBC aisle, that's health and beauty care aisle. By the way, one on every exit door, two in the parking lot, and one in my surveillance room. The cops always come by and review the tapes whenever something happens. Yeah, they're here a lot. They came by a few days after Jimmy saved that dog from dying in the car last summer. My tapes helped to convict that guy, but that's a different story. Anyway, I've been here about 35 years now. Yes, I'm that old. I thought I'd seen it all, but I was wrong. Now, I know that Pat is collecting stories about weird and horrible things that's happened here, but this is more strange than anything. I still can't figure it out. This happened about 15 years ago and hasn't happened since, thank God. Anyway, it was way before Pat even took ownership of this place. Back then, it was owned by his father, David. He was a really cool guy, strict but fair. He taught Pat everything he knows about the business. I remember Pat when he was just a little kid. He would come into the store with his dad and I'd take them up into my watchtower. That's what I like to call my surveillance room. Yes, I'm a huge Jimi Hendrix fan. Actually, it's a Bob Dylan song, but Jimmy did it better. Just my opinion. Anyway, that's way before your time. We'd sit up there and just watch people shop. And now he owns the place. Wow, I've gotten way off track here. That's what happens when you get old. Okay, the story. Right, here we go. It was mid-afternoon on a Thursday. I remember it like it was yesterday. I was in my watchtower looking out the window at all the shoppers. It's actually not a window. It's a two-way mirror, which means I can see out, but all the people down below see is a huge mirror on the wall. So if you're ever in a store and you see a mirror on the wall that seems out of place, yep, that's the surveillance room and you're being watched. Anyway, nothing was really happening that day, just the regular customers in here buying their usual stuff, kids reading the magazines as their parents shopped, old folks hanging out in the produce having a meet and greet session, the normal stuff. I noticed a person, I assumed it was a man, dressed in a long black hooded cape that dragged on the ground, standing in the barbecue section, which was the last aisle over all the way against the wall. I couldn't see his face. He was putting packages of toothpicks inside his cape. Toothpicks, of all things. Anyway, I checked the VCR to make sure it was recording and made a beeline for that aisle. My first catch of the day. I walked into the aisle and said, "Sir, can you please come with me?" He immediately ran in the opposite direction, dropping the toothpicks in the process. Well, more like glided than ran. It was very weird. Anyway, I gave chase. He nearly ran over an older lady pushing her cart down the aisle. She didn't even acknowledge what was going on. She just gave me a strange look as I ran past her. He reached the end of the aisle. I expected him to go right down the back aisle, but instead he went left, straight into a wall. I turned the corner expecting to see him on the floor, but all I saw was a black cape lying on the floor against the wall. He just disappeared into thin air. I stood there dumbfounded, scratched my head. What the H-E double hockey stick? I slowly bent over and picked up the cape and carried it back to my room. I hung it on the nail on the wall. I was sitting there just staring at it, trying to figure out what was going on, when out of the corner of my eye on camera number 6, I saw another person in a black cape standing in the middle of the parking lot. Their head was down, so again, I couldn't see their face, and their hands were cupped in front of them. I again ran down the stairs as fast as I could, ran through the store and out the front door. I got to the edge of the parking lot. I saw the person begin to raise his head, but I was still too far away to see his face. He tilted his head back and raised his arms upward as if he was screaming at the sky. Suddenly a black SUV came around the corner, heading toward him, driving faster than he should have been in a parking lot. I screamed, "Stop!" Just as the SUV was about to hit him, the cape dropped to the asphalt as the SUV drove over the top of it. This thing just disappeared as well, just like the first one. I stood there screaming, "Did you see that? Did anybody see that?" Everyone just looked at me like I was crazy. Am I the only one seeing this thing? I thought to myself. Man, I gotta stop drinking so much coffee. The caffeine's messing with my head. Anyway, I walked over and picked up that cape as well and started to walk back towards the store. People just stared at me as I walked past. I got back up to my room and hung that cape on the wall as well. I sat down in my chair and closed my eyes. My mind was going in circles. What is going on? What are these things? Where did they come from? Why can't anyone else see them? All these questions were going around in my head. Am I crazy? Have I been drugged? Is this for real? Suddenly, I felt an intense burning on my shoulders, a massive pressure holding me down in my chair. I opened my eyes and tried to scream, but nothing came out. All the monitors, all 14 of them, suddenly lost signal, then simultaneously came back on, showing the same camera image. It was the image from on my surveillance room camera. There was a black hooded figure standing behind me, holding me down. My body was paralyzed. I couldn't move. The burning was growing intolerable. My head thrust backwards with the force of 1,000 angry men. I started to hear a low guttural growl, like something from the depths of hell, as the figure leaned its head forward, directly over mine. I should have been able to see its face, but it had no face. What I did see was a dark blanket of nothingness. Then, like a movie being played, I saw still frame photos and short film bursts of Native Americans being brutally slaughtered and tortured, their dead bodies lying in huge bloody mounds in forgotten burial grounds. I've heard this place was built on ancient burial grounds, but I never expected this. It was like one of these brainwashing films that you see in spy movies. It was horrifying. The guttural growl intensified until it was almost deafening. The entire room started to shake. The mirror burst outwards, falling to the sales floor below. I screamed. The pain and fear then caused me to lose consciousness. I was awoken by David pounding on the door and screaming, "Winston, what's going on in there? Open the damn door." I rushed to my feet and opened the door and saw David standing there. He said, "Oh my God, what happened to you?" I just looked at him, confused and disoriented. I said, "I don't know." I shut the door and turned back into the room and noticed that the cameras had returned to normal. The mirror was back in place and the figure was gone. Its cape lay in a bundle behind my chair. I quickly stopped the tape and reviewed it. I was sure I caught something on there, but there was nothing. No figure stuffing toothpicks in his cape. Just me running through the aisles and toothpicks falling on the floor. No figure almost getting run over by that SUV. Just me running through the parking lot and screaming. No figure holding me down. Just me spasming in my chair. No, this can't be happening. I'm not crazy. It happened. I know it did, I said to myself. I reviewed the tapes. Again, still nothing. I grabbed all of the capes and the tape. I ran down the stairs, told David I was leaving, hopped in the car, and left. I needed to get out of there fast for my own sanity. I threw the capes and the tape in the back seat and burned rubber out of the parking lot. I drove around aimlessly for about an hour, trying to clear my head, but every time I looked in my rearview mirror, I saw the capes, and it all came rushing back to me. I saw the town church off in the distance. Now, I was never a very religious man up to that point, but after the day I had, I knew I needed Jesus. I pulled into the church, went to grab the capes and the tape out of the back seat. The capes were gone, disappeared, just like the figures. I started to panic. I grabbed the tape and ran into the church, screaming for someone to help me. Everyone turned and stared at me. An older gentleman approached me and introduced himself as Father Thomas, but that's a different story. Anyway, I told Father Thomas what had happened and showed him the tape. He took me to his office and played the tape in his VCR, and there was nothing on it, nothing but snow. Father Thomas suggested he perform a blessing on me and arrange for a baptism. I agreed. I was rebaptized 2 days later and have been an active member of the church ever since. I returned to work the next day with no questions asked. David just shook my hand and said, "I'm glad you're feeling better. Now get back to work." I really miss that man. Well, that's my story. I hope you enjoyed it. May God be with you all.